We're glad to have you back. Now, an essential sector of the economy is tourism, which also generates jobs and strengthens cross-cultural relationships between individuals from various backgrounds. World Tourism Day is celebrated annually on September 27th, a time to honor tourism significance and the global social, cultural, and economic effect it has. For upcoming generations, the day seeks to promote a more fair and sustainable tourism sector and for fostering sustainable tourism and understanding many cultures as part of the World Tourism Day, which is focused on relationship between tourism and global peace. Let's continue this conversation, and I have joining me now is Mr. Faisal Kiwewa, founder and artistic director by Yimba Foundation. He joins me from The Hague, the Netherlands. Thank you so much. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you. Nice to hear from you. Thank you so much for...
How excited are you? It's World Tourism Day 2024. Tell us how you feel. What are your expectations?
No, it's good. It's good because we get our own day to talk about the contribution of the arts and culture and towards tourism. Most of the time, it's very much overlooked when it comes to celebrations, more especially in Africa. We always think about tourism, especially in Uganda and other countries where they only look at wildlife and all other things, but they don't look at the arts and culture as part of the leisure culture that really sustains and contributes significantly to the entertainment and also the experience of peoples that come from different places. So we are really happy to be part of the conversation, to be part of the narrative that really makes this day more significant and important.
All right there. Well, it's a good way to start this conversation. But let's look at for this year and what the focus is. Let's look at the relationship now between tourism and the global peace that we see all around. How does it interrelate with each other?
Significantly, when you see that tourism is really very much depending on the stability of economies and countries and spaces and places that people visit. And as you've seen in the past, like, for example, where there are war-torn areas, it doesn't matter how beautiful or attractive the place is or strong in culture it is, people tend to ignore or be very reluctant and careful going to such places. So it is very, very important that we acknowledge the fact that peace plays a very significant role in making sure that tourism is thriving in every place, in every space, in every country. And we are really, really very aware that it's important for our systems and governments and places to have these two go hand in hand. And that's why we are always very careful and very advocating and lobbying for peaceful places, peaceful spaces, peaceful countries, to make sure that the arts and culture and tourism can thrive without any interference. So there is no way you can have a successful touristic economy when there is no peace. So peace really comes at top of everything.
As interesting as it is, let me take you back. Remember when there was COVID, that we couldn't go anywhere? I'm sure that affected tourism, because when you can't leave your spot. But that takes me to my next question. Challenges and prospects of this industry. Tell us about that.
The challenges are always, like as you said, COVID was one of the main dreadful experience that we all saw coming. And we got to learn a lot from it, but also we were challenged financially. Many cultural spaces and touristic spaces had to really rethink their approach to sustainability. They had to rethink their approach to engagement. We saw so many people, like here in the Netherlands, we had museums which were very dependent on tourism, had to rethink on how they can start really engaging local communities, because they never paid attention to them. They already thought that, why do we care about our local people, yet we have tourists coming and flooding these museums, getting 2 million people coming every year. But now they realize that with COVID, they had to really rely on the local audiences, on the local communities, and they had to rethink. And one of the most brilliant strategies that they came up with was, which I found very fascinating, was to rethink how they could approach getting young people into the museums. You know how young people don't like going to museums. They think they are for old people or retired people or grandparents. But they had to rethink and start doing regular events. Every Fridays, they could have a disco. They changed their catalog of where they, you have these beautiful paintings of Van Gogh, Rembrandt, and they just got those paintings and started putting them on sneakers and having a Van Gogh sneaker, a Van Gogh t-shirt. And young people really wanted to go to the museum because they knew there was disco every Friday, there was a DJ, and there were these beautiful canvases that have paintings of great artists that they know. And I thought that was really a very good strategy to really come up with a way of attracting new audiences. So I think it's the same thing that we can also think, yes, COVID was a danger. There are so many other situations that we have, but we also have to look at how do we navigate to be resilient in a way that to find other alternative ways to keep ourselves sustainable and also keep moving and working within the environment that we are able to operate.
Well, moving on with this, that's a good one. And the theme is tourism and peace. Oh, actually, we touched on that already. Now, what do you think governments need to do to support this space? This sector can create needed jobs. There are jobs in the tourism space across all segments of that industry. Now, do you think government understands how to address this or how to face this? Or what sort of collaboration are you looking at moving forward?
I think the governments on the African continent are very diverse. They all have different approaches when it comes to how they look at culture, how they look at arts, how they look at tourism,
Good.
and how they look at peace. At the same time, also how they look at their priorities when it comes to investments. When I looked at the Francophone African countries, they are very, very embedded into the idea that culture, tourism, and arts are part of kind of the human right to them. And when you look at the Anglophone Africa, it's totally different. It's business, it's creativity, which has to thrive on its own. If you're creative, you can figure out how to survive. That's not the way to keep it sustainable. That's not the way to make it really stronger in an environment where there are challenges that sometimes are inevitable. So I really think our governments, especially I would speak from the Anglophone Africa, they need to start looking at the creative culture, the tourism industry, and peace as part of the stronger elements of society, as part of the job opportunities for young people, especially with the youth bubble that is going on in Africa. So we really think that our governments need to reprioritize. I understand the whole issue of military security and strength and power and whatever other infrastructure needs, but also they have to look at how many young people in their countries and how can we support them? How can they be part of the growing generation and tap into the opportunities of jobs that are within the creative industries and the tourism industry? So I really think most of them, even if you tell them, it goes to deaf ears. But I think it's really important that they can start reorganizing themselves, re-strategizing, reprioritizing, and putting some really necessary investments in these areas. And I can tell you, like, for example, in Uganda, when you look at the most thriving industry is film. But government doesn't care about film because they think it's really like people are doing comedy. They think it's comedy. Yet there is a whole new industry that is really thriving, just like in Nigeria, how it has been in Nollywood. And I think in Uganda is picking a leaf from there because we see there are so many young people that can benefit from that. And I think film is not just only for cinema, but it is also for tourism. I would love to come to Nigeria and go to Surulere because I know that's where Nollywood started, and I think we would like to go and see where it all began. I think that could be an attraction for all African countries, like Egypt does, like Morocco does. When you go to Morocco, when you go to Ouarzazate, you can see a whole Hollywood set up there. You can shoot a film, whether it's about ancient Egypt or ancient Africa or ancient, the pyramids and all that. They have set up it. When you go to Ouarzazate, it's a whole Hollywood structure set up there. So we need to start thinking within our own countries, how can we create these industries, strengthen them, just like we spend a lot on advertising our gorillas and our chimpanzees. We can also advertise our creative arts, our creative content, and push tourism to come to it to see that it can be part of a global and bigger goal for our countries. And I'm definitely sure that it can create more jobs and more revenues coming in every country.
I must say this is an interesting conversation. But before I let you go, let's look ahead. I like to always project ahead of 2025. God keep us. What do you think, or what are you expecting in the industry as we move forward?
I think 2025 is going to be one of the game changers, because I see a lot of young African entrepreneurs really investing their time and energy in defining what they think is important to them, not really looking at the politics and governments waiting for them to support, but they are really putting out their hands and putting out their energies to be part of a build of their nations. And I think it's a very genuine effort that everyone is doing, every entrepreneur in Africa is doing. And I'm really proud to see that we are part of that generation of young entrepreneurs who are supportive and encouraging, but also not dependent on politics, but systematically from the ground up, building our own investments, building our own advocacy platforms, trying to lobby, trying to put platforms and spaces in place, creating the economies, and also being mindful of the securities, like the previous colleague was talking about cybersecurity, knowing how to deal with the investments, how to deal with debit cards, credit cards, how to deal with transactions, and how to collect revenues and reinvest it in our own countries. And I think it's a brilliant thing, a brilliant effort. And I'm really sure that within these coming years, as we've learned a lot from COVID experience, and I think we're still learning, we are going to be very strong and more resilient when it comes to how are we going to be approaching our efforts come 2025.
I must thank you so much for your time. Faisal Kiwewa is the founder and artistic director by Yimba Foundation. He joined me live on the show from The Hague in the Netherlands. Thank you so much. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Well, interesting conversation there around the World Tourism Day.